All right, first things first, it might be a little distracting when you see my shirt here. There's green in this rainbow, and it's like going going through to the backwards picture. This death metal shirt that I have has green in it, so that's the first thing to announce when I start this video. Welcome in everybody to the Mosh Pit. I wanted to give my final thoughts on Boyfriend Dungeon. I played through it. You can see that. I put the link in the comments below. I did a full playthrough of this game, and I thought I'd give my final thoughts on this game. I have played quite a few dating sims and dungeon crawlers in my day, so I thought I'd give a little bit of a review-ish. I don't really do reviews, but I'll give my thoughts on it, and you can kind of take that for what it is. I would like to say right off the bat, there's going to be some spoilers, so if you haven't played the game and you don't want to know about some things, there'll be mild spoilers in here, not a ton. But there'll be some discussion of story and characters. So if you don't want to see that, go play it, come back later, and then see if you agree with what I think about the game. Now, right off the bat, the character creator in this game is pretty simple. You don't see your character most of the time in dating sims, so that kind of thing isn't usually something that you get to see too much. Dream Daddy was probably the exception to that rule where you could choose your shirts and things like that. And this one has a character creator. It's very simple. There's not a whole lot of options, but it was decent. The cool thing about it is that as you play, you get more outfits. Those outfits, I found out kind of late into my play, also give you some benefits. So some of the helmets will give you benefits to the gameplay, like an extra life or more healing items, that kind of thing. And some of those outfits are actually pretty fun to wear, and the look changes enough to where it was like, oh, cool, look I can do this thing. You know, oh, look at these sunglasses I can wear, or I'm an angel now, that kind of thing. Besides just benefits to the game, they're also fun to wear. So I enjoyed that part of it. Now, in Boyfriend Dungeon, the NPCs will sometimes, especially when you first meet them, and in critical parts of the game, will be voice acted. They're not 100% voice acted, so it's a half and half kind of scenario. And that always throws me off as somebody who's doing a Let's Play. I either want it to be fully voiced or not voiced at all so that I can do the voice. But because it was half and half, I never knew when I should be jumping in and reading it or if I should let them say their lines. That's a very minor gripe, but it's definitely a gripe for me. I'd rather not have it at all or have like just a or a what instead of a full voice track, but they opted to go with full voices for all these weapons and NPCs only in certain occasions, and that's just, I don't know, it's not a decision I like in a dating sim. I would rather have it all or nothing. It makes it easier for me as the player, but I think that's more specific to somebody who's doing a Let's Play, so it might not affect you at all. Now, as when it comes to the NPCs, they have a fairly standard grouping of types in this game that you see in a lot of the other dating sims that I've played. You've got, the brooding type who's not really going to be settling down for a relationship, but will bang on any occasion. You've got the kind of innocent young type. You've got kind of a weirdo, which is the cat. You've got some supernatural stuff within here too. So you've got vampires and witches and just some odd types of NPCs to date. Nothing out of the like, whoa, what the hell? I don't want to date that kind of thing. I dated everybody pretty much. For me, I mained the female character that you're dating in there, who is the dagger, Valeria, just because I liked her, but also because it was, I don't know, maybe I prefer dating women in these games and not the guys. But Dream Daddy, I played all the way through, and you're dating all guys in that, and I date all the dudes. Date all the dudes. It's a game. What the hell? Why not? I did feel like there wasn't enough cutoff points for making mistakes with them to where you felt like, oh man, I need to play this again and choose this so that I can progress this weapon. You can pretty much progress all of them all the way through to max. There is no, like, even if you made a mistake on a dialogue choice that they didn't like, you can still progress. You just make a different dialogue choice later. There's no kind of like love meter, as it were. You pretty much you have love levels, but you can earn those by just going back into the dungeon. So even if you mess up on a date and the date didn't go that great, you can go back into the dungeon, earn those love levels through combat, and still level up the weapon. You can choose friendship on everybody as well. You don't have to bang everybody. Now there's the option to do that because they bring it back up too. So if you had made a friendship with somebody, but then later on you're like, you know what, maybe I want to see what the options are. So there's a small bit of replayability for just seeing dialogue options, but there's no hard progression stop where, oh man, I really made a mistake. I can no longer progress with that person unless I replay the whole game and make different choices. And that is kind of a bummer, but for me, I didn't feel like I was going to play this game again anyway. So it wasn't like with Dream Daddy, I played that through a couple of times to see some dialogue options and some progressions that I wasn't able to get because I made some mistakes with people. And then that game, there was some mini games that if you screwed up the mini game, it also screwed up your progression. So there was a real reason to go back and have replayability there. Where this game, I feel like there really isn't a whole lot of replayability. If you max out all the weapons, you've pretty much done everything. Now, when it comes to comparing them to other dating sims, I feel like Dream Daddy and Colonel Sanders, I Love You, and Doki Doki Literature Club, those ones are all kind of like my top tier dating sims that I've played. This game doesn't really compare to those in like quality. I feel like there wasn't like a lot of bugs or anything, but it had some issues with it that were just kind of a little bit lackluster compared to those. Those games were, you know, the top tier ones, in my opinion. This one's more kind of like a middle of the road dating sim where it's like, yeah, it's pretty decent. It was okay. Wasn't super memorable. It was weird, which is good. You know, I like the weird, but not weird enough. Now, the second largest piece of this game is going into the dungeon and fighting the enemies and leveling up your weapons, going on little mini dates within the dungeon. I feel like once you've gone through one dungeon, I mean, there was some different enemies in the next dungeon, but it was pretty much the same rinse and repeat formula, and they didn't mix it up enough. I really would have liked the second dungeon to be quite a bit different, different layout, different floor plans, but it all was still very similar. It was slightly different, but still very similar. And the enemies in there you were supposed to be fighting your fears, which is a great concept. I like the concept of fighting your fears, but they didn't really flesh out why you were afraid of the phone, why you were afraid of music, why you were afraid of cocktails. Like all the enemies, you could kind of maybe look at it and go, okay, this character, me, I'm playing is afraid of these things. Okay. But then it really didn't go into the why of that. It just went right into the dates. Even with your cousin, like you had a couple of small little dialogue options that came up in the early part of the game to talk about your fears, but then it kind of just dropped. It was almost like they started going down that route and then just ran out of time or just forgot about it. It's kind of weird. And I think in future updates, if they could add in more about why you're afraid of these things, what that means, what the history there is, maybe some talks with your mom. You know, I really like the texting with the mom. That was one of my favorite parts of this game was the texting with the mom. Because there's text after all the dates and after all the dungeons. You get text from people that either set up another date or kind of added to your story with them. And I really like the mom and the cousin, but there wasn't anything about those fears. And so it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. And another thing that didn't quite make that much sense is the crafting materials. You can craft quite a bit of things in here. You can craft these zines that give you extra bonus powers, and you can craft outfits. And you can also craft presents to give to different people on dates, and those presents will help level them up on the date scale. So if you give somebody a perfect present, that you go, oh, this present here is going to be perfect for this weapon type. This person has this kind of personality. He's going to really like this one. I've given some to where they were like, I don't even want that, and I got it back. We're like, I don't, what is this? And they get the little sweat emoji coming down off their face going, I don't want that crap. Take it back. But it doesn't negatively, really. You don't lose love points by giving the wrong gift. But the crafting on all that was like plastic and sugar and wire. And you go, I took my plastic, sugar, and wire and I made this outfit. And you're like, what? I took this cloth and metal and some sugar lumps, and I made this other outfit, and it's like it didn't make a whole lot of sense. That wasn't a huge like problem, but you end up getting a ton of materials that were just like they could have added some materials that actually made sense. Like, oh, okay, I got some thread, I got some metal, I got, I don't know what the sugar never is going to go into any outfit I ever make, or a zine. I'm not gonna like should have been paper, ink, maybe some pins, some stickers, things like that actually make sense for what you're building. But whatever, that's a small gripe. One thing that was always satisfying in this game was leveling up the weapons. So after you get the love level up to a certain, the next tier, you would go on a date with them, progress through the dialogue at the end of the date, or sometimes like kind of in the middle of the date, it will give you the next tier of weapon upgrade. And those weapon upgrades were always satisfying every time. I really enjoyed that part of it. That was probably the best part of this game, was the weapon upgrades and getting these new abilities on the weapons, because they were significant. They weren't something where it's like, oh, okay, great. Some of the weapons I didn't like that much. The scythe, I'm looking at you. Not from a personality standpoint, but from the weapon itself, it just wasn't so fun to use. Laser saber was okay as well, that kind of thing. But every time I got a new ability, it really helped change that weapon style and the weapon ability, where it really felt good. The problem was that to get the weapon up to that top tier, you had to play through the same dungeons over and over again, and they really needed a third dungeon. You really needed one third tier dungeon that with higher enemies that were quite a bit more challenging, because once you max out a weapon, there really is no reason to play it again because there's no more dates. And you can take that weapon into the final boss fight, but that's it. Like, it would really be nice to have a maxed weapon and go into that really hard third dungeon that gets you, some really cool outfits, or, maybe a zine that's overpowered or something like that. Like, if they could add that in as a DLC later, I could see that really enhancing the game for future players who haven't played this game yet. I don't know that if it would pull me back in to play it, but I really think that it could be a game changer to add a third dungeon to the game. And the last piece I wanted to cover is the boss fights. The final boss fight is pretty significant, so it's definitely something where you should go into that with a maxed out weapon and make sure it's one that you're really comfortable with. Make sure that your clothing that you pick has the benefits that are going to get you through that fight, because it is tough. If you watch my final episode, you can see the final boss fight knocked me out quite a few times, and it really took me concentrating on dodging and getting out of the way, because he'll two-shot you and you're dead. The other boss fights weren't as tough, but they were fun. None of the boss fights I felt were just a bunch of BS, or they were boring or anything. I liked the boss fights. I thought that they were pretty cool, and they did ramp up. So the first boss fight is not too challenging, and the next one's a little bit harder, the next one's a little bit harder, and then the final boss fight's really tough. So from a dungeon crawler perspective and from a combat perspective, it was pretty good. It's just the dating was a little lackluster, and the options for progressing that stuff was a little bit They did have an enemy protagonist, Eric, in the game that you were, he kept kind of stalking you, and there's a warning about that in the beginning of the game. It was fine for me. I've seen some reviews on this game where people didn't care for that, and it was a little triggering for them. I've had some exes, not my exes. I had my wife had an ex when we first got together that was a little stalkery and shitty, but it didn't have any kind of negative triggery effects. This is a video game, and I didn't take it too seriously. So some people have had some trigger issues with that part of it, which I would say, if you have that kind of trigger and it's going to affect you, don't play the game. But I didn't find it too bad. He was annoying that he kept popping up and stalking me and being kind of a shithead. But, every game's going to have some kind of like shitty jerk character that you have to deal with throughout the whole game. So that's kind of common for these dating sims, or for pretty much any game. There's always going to be some enemy who's an asshole, right? That's the whole point of the game. You end up overcoming the asshole. But overall, I enjoyed it. I do think it's, It's kind of a mid-tier dating sim. I would say if you like dating sims a lot, you'll probably enjoy the game itself for what it is. The combat is not too hard, and you can use some outfit items to adjust it so that it's a little easier for you. But yeah, if you enjoy this game, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it, how you felt, if any of this stuff rang true for you. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and I'm looking forward to, I'm not really even sure what the next dating sim coming out is. There was one I think that I have on my wish list on Steam, but I don't even remember. So keep an eye on this channel if you're interested in that kind of stuff and other kinds of games that I cover, and I will see you in the next video.